Celtic Stuff Live.
Celtic Stuff Live on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for Boston sports. We are bringing back the guest today for you. Actually, two great guests, Bobby Manning from the Bobcast and Celtics blog, and then also Sam Sheehan, who is of the Reddit board, which I know everybody reads. And good counterpart there with Ryan Bernardoni, who had a good article on Celtics Hub. We'll be getting a little bit too, although Ryan promises more articles, and he's somebody that we're lining up in the next couple of weeks. So really excited to get to both of these guests, and Jon is actually going to be joining me while we have guests, which, Jon, sometimes that doesn't happen. We kind of segregate ourselves, but there's going to be 4 different voices on the show for today.
It's almost it's a bevy of riches, a cornucopia of oral just
watch yourself.
Yeah, I gotta be careful here. I was gonna go somewhere and I'm like, oh, I can't use that word.
Don't go there.
That one's not good either. Oh shoot. I'm just gonna stop. And thank you, Justin, for pulling me back from that ledge. Yes, it's gonna be great.
It is. It's going to be an oral cornucopia. I'm never gonna forget that one. That one is going in the annals of Celtic Stuff Live.
Wow.
The show is off the hook.
We got annals. Oh boy. You know what this is? I feel like, just to pull it back from the ledge, this is a little bit of, this is like an Avengers movie of CLNS radio right now.
Yeah.
You know, we got Bobby, we got Sam, Justin, myself. I mean, not everybody, you know.
It's Mount Rushmore.
It's a bit. I mean, we're not going to, let's not tell Larry that he's not on Mount Rushmore for CLNS radio, and we won't mention it to Jared, but hey, you know. Hey, we're here. It's good. I'm ready to fight whatever.
Might be the 4 goofiest guys on the network, that's for sure.
There are definitely some goofballs on the show. You're right about that, Bobby. Well, let's just welcome you right in. Bobby Manning, everybody of the Bobcast, did a nice interview with me several months back, and I know, Bobby, you're home for the summer. You've been at school away at Syracuse for your very first year. Now you're getting a chance to get a little bit of a break, maybe make some cash this summer to go back to school with, but did a really nice job taking the CLNS Media CLNS Celtics post-game show to task in the postseason. You really were the anchor or the voice of the post-game show. And unfortunately, since the last time Jon and I spoke to all of our listeners, that postseason has ended for the Boston Celtics. Not that we didn't expect it to, Jon. We were kind of hoping maybe it would get to a Game 6. Obviously it didn't, but Bobby, you were really killing it on the post-game show, and I guess
thank you.
You're probably ready to start talking about some off-season.
Yeah, the post-game show, as we call it, organized chaos. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of havoc and nonsense and just a big mixed pot of everything over there. It's a lot of fun though. I love doing that. I do it every night if I could. It goes late into the night. You get people from all over the country, different countries calling. Australia, we hear Woody in Australia all the time. So that was a lot of fun. And the postseason ran about as deep as I expected it to. I thought this was the second best team in the East. I think they really proved themselves to be that. Once again, they were a squad all year long that you could really fall in love with, root for. There wasn't a single unlikable guy on this roster, I thought, which is great because if Carmelo Anthony was here, that'd be a little different. But they kept everything intact. They believed in the roster they had, the cohesion they had between all these players. And to Danny Ainge's credit, I know we did a little trade deadline show where we were getting mad, or I was getting mad. But in the end, I'll concede to Danny Ainge. He was right. Not making a move at the deadline was the right move.
And it was hard to see at that point. You know, we were looking at our rivals at that point, really looking at the Raptors, looking at the Wizards, both adding veteran pieces who could absolutely add to the weaknesses of both cores in Washington and in Toronto. And Danny stands pat. Didn't even add a big man for a late second rounder that seemingly had no value. And I think that was the one piece that really kind of drove us a lot. I'm pretty mad, as we got through that deadline show. But boy, who was proven right at the end? As Danny once again has proved us all wrong.
Whatever reason it was for, I mean, we'll never truly know the reason, whether it was a high price on some of these guys for them or maybe like an inside feeling that he couldn't compete with Cleveland no matter what he did, which of course Toronto showed in some way with the additions they made, absolutely getting bashed off the court by LeBron and company. But I think he saw a lot more value in keeping this group together and the kind of energy and chemistry they had together, what that meant, rather than just pulling in a marginal talent or an above average talent maybe for that position for a higher price than you want to pay. I think he just saw more value in keeping everything together and just seeing what he could do.
I'll tell you what, Bobby, I don't think there was any value for Danny making the trade at the deadline, specifically because he'll pretty much wait until the last minute. I mean, yeah, he always said he would trade Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce once he felt like that window had closed. But he did wait till the last minute. He didn't trade those guys in their prime. Kevin had struggled with injuries. Lateral motion was definitely starting to wane. Brooklyn was a perfect match for them to be able to spin off two veteran pieces. Obviously in Washington, Paul Pierce still had quite a bit left in the tank. But for the most part, I think he likes to hold his chips close to the vest until the very last minute. And had he gotten a sweetheart deal at the deadline where he really felt like he was going to be on the winning end of it, he would have made it. But the truth is the draft pick wasn't positioned yet. Had this pick fallen to 4, there might be a completely different attitude towards how they want to move it. But now that we know it's number 1, I think it could be a completely different game plan moving forward for the team anyway.
Well, yeah, you had to roll the dice on Brooklyn having the good chances at that number 1 pick. We all knew Brooklyn was going down the tank anyway, and that 1 and 4, it's a tricky thing, but it worked out in our favor this time. I don't know what kind of magic happened or Wick Grosbeck being the good luck charm, but those were pretty good odds to play in the lottery, and by some grace of the basketball gods, we got it. Markelle Fultz, baby.
Markelle Fultz, and it's so amazing to me. I mean, look, Danny has not done anything to kind of tip his hand. He's playing all above board. We're going to look at everybody. We know this week he told 98.5 the Sports Subs Toucher and Rich show that they have already gotten word from LeVar Ball's folks, who's really representing his son Lonzo Ball.
Yeah, very well.
That they are not going to be coming to Boston to work out. Which is really unsurprising to me.
And I'm not, no. Dude, seriously, who cares? I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
This thing's been done, right? It's been done.
I'm trying to think of a comparison. I'm really trying to just think of no one wants him here. No, not a single person in Boston, or very few at least, want Lonzo Ball. I mean, he's not blowing it. He has the ego of this untouchable prospect that everyone has to have. And
can I just say he is so LA and not Boston. Yeah. That's just what it is. And honestly, maybe it's more his dad. Maybe it's unfair to do that to Lonzo because it's not like he's the one that's really putting on the showtime and the fanfare. He's going along with it, but he's a kid, and it's what his family has been built around doing for a long, long time. And I did read an interesting article from a year ago where they were talking about how the Ball family really didn't even do a lot of the travel teams. They created their own travel team to keep it really close and close-knit in LA so that the family could stay together. And I think they wound up combining the kids on one team and having the youngest play up for that specific reason as well, so that they could really simplify their life. In that respect, I've got to give Lamar plenty of props because he did a nice job of making it all about family and not overcomplicating it. But at the end of the day, the whole shoe thing and everything else is totally out of control. It's not a Boston mentality. And I know, John, you really weren't, and neither were I, very high on Lonzo anyway heading into this draft. You and I were trying to find reasons to put Jason Tatum and Josh Jackson up ahead of him in our mock draft.
That's right. Yeah, no, I'm, and that's not to say he won't be a good player. He has a special ability with the ball and finding guys and as a passer. I mean, that's, he could be special in that regard, but I just didn't see him being the second best player in a draft with players like Josh Jackson and Jason Tatum, who I think could also take a significant leap as wing players in this league. And he did not have that ability to score all three levels as we've all read and continue to read about Markelle Fultz. It's just surprising to me about Fultz. To go back to that, I love Fultz. There was no question he's the number one guy. I love that. But the thing to me about Fultz that's a bit surprising is that we're almost just, it's just obvious. Like it's just so obvious.
It's easy.
It's
you watch
silly.
the video, it's easy.
We need the shooting. We need the shooting so bad.
You don't even have to be one of these draft guys who just comb through books and video and like pull out everything they can on these guys. You just watch one quick 5-minute YouTube video on this guy and you know he's a stud. Like there's no holes in his game. There really aren't. Like you can pick apart little things here or there, of course, with a guy this young, and I'm sure there's going to be some bumps in the road for him, but he is so ultra talented in every aspect of the game. And on top of that, his ability to play two positions up at the guard slot there and his size, it couldn't have been more perfect, the position they're in right now. It's so easy. Like number 2 would have been kind of tricky. Number 3 would have been really tough. Like that would have put Danny in another really tough position as it did last.
I don't think so. I think he probably. It would have been tough, but now you're talking about wings, and so when we're trying to consider how they're going to make the roster work, immediately you're looking at the same set of sort of moves, and you could sit tight a little while if they were forced into drafting another wing / power forward. The benefit to having Tatum would have been bringing some shooting and a guy who can definitely get an open look, because that's really what this club needs. But that's what makes Fultz such an easy, perfect fit. But I think if they had been at 3 or even 4, they would have drafted another wing, and maybe that would have meant a little bit more time to sort things out depending on the free agent sort of balance. And we're going to get to that in a second. But first, just a quick air check, I guess, about the network, or a network announcement. Make sure you're following Celtic Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweetlive, as well as you can follow me at CSL_Justin. John is at CSL_Duke. Bobby Manning at Real Bobby Manning, and the entire CLNS Radio Network at CLNS Radio. Don't forget the Facebook page, facebook.com/CLNS fans, and download the CLNS Radio app for iOS and Android. Simply search CLNS Radio in your app marketplace. The YouTube channel, finally, we're going to add this one. They did an stellar job. We saw a ton from Nick Gelso in the postseason, who'd been making trips up to Boston to join the Garden Report with Jared Weiss and Jimmy Toscano and Bobby as well. YouTube channel, youtube.com/CLNS Radio, high definition, full-length locker room interviews, and the Garden Report. I'm sure in the Garden Report with Jared Weiss, and I'm sure there'll be tons of draft night coverage, as there always is. So let's talk about Gordon Hayward a little bit, because this is really the only guy we want. In my opinion, as much as we've been locked into Markelle Fultz, and then we got the number 1 pick, and it's such a no-brainer that that's going to happen, if there is a no-brainer of a free agent acquisition, I think we go right to Gordon Hayward, and that's the guy we've been talking about, actually, not just this season, but John, I started to get really, really warmed up to Gordon Hayward at the trade deadline last year, and when rumors were that they might acquire him in trade, again, 18 months ago, I was pretty pumped. I remember you and I talking about this 2 years ago when we first brought the show back about Gordon Hayward, and would we give up the number 1 pick, which became Jaylen Brown, and boy, would that have been a Sophie's choice for you, my friend. Mm-hmm. The ability to add a guy like Gordon Hayward without giving up any assets is so big. I mean, it puts this team on a different level. It puts them in a sphere and a different level as a franchise in the league.
And I think it puts them legitimately in that number 2 spot. I think a lot of people say, well, they overachieved. They don't have a team at that caliber of Washington or Toronto. You know, they're better 1 through 8, but they're not as good overall. I think if you consolidate players and you turn that into Gordon Hayward without having to give up much, and we'll talk about what you do have to give up to get Gordon Hayward in a second, I think that puts this team really in a different tier. It also puts them, the most important thing about Gordon Hayward and not giving up anything to get a guy like Gordon Hayward, the most important piece of that is this. You can hold your draft picks and you have a good team that is ready to pounce on the big star who's not available right now. I'm not saying that's Paul George. I'm not saying that's Jimmy Butler. I'm saying the next big star. We're talking the level of, you know, whether it's Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, somebody of that elite levels. When that guy becomes available, Danny still has all the pieces of the puzzle to get that guy to add to a team that's already going to be second in the East. You know, he's got that Trump move that moves him above Cleveland and when they start to falter. And those days will come, even if LeBron certainly didn't look like it over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, whenever that day comes, that's going to be the key. We really have no clue how far of a window it's going to be. I mean, Kevin O'Connor kind of pushed it back as far as 2025, which is a scary thought. But I think that the road you got to take as a team right now, and they certainly can take this road, and it'll be good for us, the fans too, and the media around them, is just be good every year. Be as good as you can be every single year. Don't worry about what Cleveland's doing. Don't worry about trying to push yourself above them. You just got to be as good as you can every year. And a good starting point for that's going to be Hayward. Like, he just fits right in with this team's system. He's a star-level talent that doesn't have a lot of baggage, which you always love to see. There's some room for growth with him, which I really love to see as well. Some of these other guys out there, Blake Griffin, Paul Millsap, even some of the guys on the trade market, like we've talked a lot about Paul George and Jimmy Butler. We kind of have an idea what those guys are at this point. I mean, they're great players. George, I even think, is kind of on the back end of his greatness, which is a concern. But Hayward is still on that upward trend. I mean, he just had the best season of his career, and you can still see feasible ways in a better system where he can improve. And let's not forget, that Utah offense, not a lot of playmakers there, not a very sound offensively focused system in general, and he still had a great year. And I haven't been the biggest Hayward guy ever, but I do believe in this thing about the Celtics, where if you pull in a guy here who has some level of talent, and we certainly saw this with Isaiah Thomas, I think fitting them into the system definitely helps guys take a jump of some sort. And I'm really interested to see over these next couple of years, both with the young players and some of the veteran level guys that they bring in, do we continue to see these guys take leaps and bounds in Brad Stevens' system, or just in the general things around this team that they do? Like, I want to see if Hayward comes here and maybe jumps that 22 points per game up to 24 or 25.
I don't think it'll happen. I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah,
no, not at all. And here's why. Just look at the props that LeBron gave to Brad for how they adjusted, or how he adjusted the team in Isaiah Thomas's absence. Those, especially with the Game 3 win. I think, look at Al Horford. Everybody is statistically disappointed, and yet everybody who really watches basketball is lauding his performance out on the floor and what he's done to be a team player. I think the system doesn't allow for somebody like Gordon Hayward to jump up. As a matter of fact, what we want him to come and do, and this is why we were saying we still need shooters. How many open shots did this team still continue to miss in the postseason, where it would have made a difference in how that game continued to go? Not only just points on the board, but in terms of the spacing. Once they're not knocking down those shots, all of a sudden everything tightens up. They key in on Isaiah even harder. The whole point of bringing in Gordon Hayward is because they'll have a guy who will be able to knock down clutch shots when he's wide open, that'll take pressure off of Isaiah. I don't think he makes an even bigger leap in points. I think the goal is to spread it around. And also, if you have that much talent, you'll be able to do what Cleveland did much of this season. And I know their record isn't something that we're going to point at, but they did suffer through injuries. But the point is that they're able to rest guys. You can give a guy a night off or significantly reduced minutes. if there's more than one scorer. Look at the beating and the impact that wound up catching up to Isaiah in the postseason. We lost him after 2 games. The hip pointer, I think it was a hip pointer. I can't remember what the original injury back in March was or February. But whatever that injury was, it lingered and lingered and lingered, and that's because they couldn't live without him. He could not get proper rest. He could not have his minutes reduced. They had him to play, and especially once they were in the playoffs. So I think that's what you'd see. I don't think we'll see a jump for Hayward, and I think we'd be fine with that because I think that would it would show us that the team is playing the way Brad would want them to, with talent being acquired.
I think that I'm probably more on Bobby's side of things in this. I do think that a consolidation of talent will open up. This isn't where so Bobby was going, but where I see it is I think that there's going to be more shots in this Celtics offense next year. The need to send out a significant piece, whether it's Crowder, whether it's Smart, whether it's Bradley, to make
that's a tough question.
This Bradley deal happen. Yeah, it is. I mean, you want to take a guy like, let's say Bradley off the floor. Who's going to fill that role in the offense? And you got to feel like, there's going to be a role there for whoever, whether it's Hayward. I mean, right now you end up with Bradley coming away this season with, right around, well, I guess it's per 36 minutes, he's getting 15 shots a game. Who's going to take those shots? Well, you got to figure Hayward's going to take those shots. So if Bradley's going to get 15 shots, Bradley, you got to think you got to give 5 more, to Hayward. I think he's got a chance. I think he's got a shot to be able to fill that, to take that next bump in his scoring average. Hayward is a guy. He is 7 years into his league. He's added into this league. He's added to his scoring average every single year he's been in the league. A real Reggie Lewis type feat for those who remember Reggie's ascent as a player, who went from to really just kept getting better, and really became a star before. Unfortunately, sadly, he was tragically taken from us. I think that Hayward has a chance to build on that. That means Isaiah's got to take a step back too. And I think he welcomes that. And I think that's okay for the Celtics moving forward.
You want him to fit nicely in the system too. And the tough question that comes into this is who you give up to get him in here. Because of course he has that above and beyond scoring ability that you really want to throw into the offense. And we keep talking about that second scoring option around Isaiah. I still think Isaiah's here next year. I don't think the value's there if you trade him. I think it's tough to justify just throwing a guy of that level. Yeah, there's really no way. That
sports talk nonsense, especially after the injury, there was no way that they're going to move him, because they're going to, first off, if you're going to trade him, you've got to see him return to form. And that's what I think the bigger question, which we discussed a little bit last week, was would they extend him? And I don't think they'll extend him at this point either. They're going to want to make sure he's healthy.
Well, on the post-game
but let me throw this at you real quick. Let me throw this at you. If Markelle Fultz is the guy who they draft and they start working him into the rotation, and he winds up finding his way into that starting lineup, and we're talking about more shots, aren't they going to give some to Markelle Fultz? Aren't they going to give some of those shots to Hayward? Don't you think they want to give more shots to Horford too, with a more balanced offense? I don't know. I'm not sure that these all go to Hayward if they acquire him.
There's a lot going on in this roster. There's a lot of guys you really just kind of have to move out of here right now. There's a lot going on, and that's what makes it so complicated. Like, as rich, as stupidly beneficial they've been to have all these assets right now, they're kind of reaching a breaking point where it's just too much. I mean, we talked about this on the last post-game show. Something's got to give, and the decision on who or what it's going to be is a tough one. I mean, you would love to ideally see something come together where you can consolidate a lot of these assets, ship them out, and see something bigger come in here. And that's where you kind of look at that Paul George, Jimmy Butler thing out there that we've been talking about for so long. But they
still have to the trade deadline too. Think about it. They don't really have, other than Kelly Olynyk, they don't have really hard roster decisions to make this summer. And if they don't get Hayward, then Kelly's a no-brainer and they bring him back. But if they get Hayward, Kelly Olynyk's a likely casualty. Then you got the Amir Johnsons, the Jonas Jerebkos, the Gerald Greens. Maybe some of those guys can come back for one of the exceptions. But outside of that, they still really don't have to make any said moves until next trade deadline. They can really sit back and say, all right, let's see some of Markelle Fultz. Let's see how Isaiah comes back from injury. I mean, sure, the other teams, if we were going to make a deal, you would think if you're going to get a Butler or a Paul George, yeah, you want to make the trade sooner than later so you get the most out of their contracts before they expire. But the truth is the club should not feel a sense of urgency to make a trade quite yet. Not quite yet.
No. Well, I think they do, actually. I think the issue is it's creating enough cap space to be able to sign Hayward initially. Mm-hmm. And I
think you fall just short. I mean, the cap will make your head spin, and that's where our buddy Sheehan's going to make some sense for us in a little bit. But
absolutely, yeah.
It's tough to navigate, but I do think they just fall a little bit short on the amount of cap space they need to bring Hayward in here. And when you have that guard conundrum that they do right now, I mean, they're going to be looking at 6 guards vying for space total next year, if you even include Demetrius Jackson in that conversation. And they could just let him fly as well. He's another guy at the bottom of the roster that isn't necessarily important right now, but there's just so much going on here, and you got to wonder if maybe they say we want to consolidate this thing ahead of time.
I do too. I mean, I think I'm kind of
especially with the rookies. Look at last year. I mean, we loved everything Jaylen Brown showed us, but didn't he feel just a little bit buried? Like he felt buried behind Crowder, behind Gerald Green, and certainly it all worked. I'm sure he had a very beneficial rookie year with how they reeled him in after every mistake he made.
I don't know, dude. I don't think he was buried at all. I think as soon as Avery Bradley got, free, as soon as Avery Bradley got injured, he was called into action. I think that's kind of how this roster was. He's a rookie. You still got to earn your way out there. It'll be different with Fultz because he's a shot maker, but John, what do you think about finish your thought on why you think they need to make a deal now?
Well, I think, again, as Bobby said, Sam will go into this a bit, but Ryan Bernardoni's post on Celtics Hub really helps to explain it well, and about halfway down into it, he really lays out the different options that's out there. And basically where we stand right now is if you take everything as is, and basically with Fultz, at the bare minimum to get to 30 million, 30.7 million, you have to trade away Rozier, right? And you have to get nothing back and for it, and you have to stash Yabusele. I mean, there's as Bobby said, there's so many different moving pieces here, and it seems like Yabusele, if he wants to come here, the Celtics basically have to take him or they lose his rights. So something else has to happen. There has to be some sort of move that kind of offsets Yabusele coming in, Zizic coming in, but to then create the space you need for, basically a few $1 million. And what we don't know is where the cap number is. That's the big unknown at this point. Teams have a sense, but they won't know for sure until July exactly what that number is. And so the issue is that, it's a couple $1 million one way or the other. If it's a little bit higher, we're in a good position. If it's where they think it's going to be, there could be some harder choices up to and including the issue of Bradley, Crowder, or Smart, and needing to move one of those guys to hold most of what's left of the good parts of your bench in place, so that way you can sign Hayward and have long-term rookie contracts that are they're cost controlled, so you aren't going to run into some tax issues down the line, which is a very real possibility if you have, an extended IT, a big contract for Hayward and a big contract for Al Horford.
Yeah, I guess
so. There's some issues there.
Yeah, but not all those decisions need to be made now, and we've only got about a minute left before we head off to the break. Bobby, thanks for coming on the show. I wanted to give you kind of the closing say, I suppose, for the first segment of the show. And, hammer out your final thoughts on kind of that delicate balance there and around the timing of the cap. And yeah, it is really complicated, but what's your sense before we head to break?
My sense of it is that they're going to get Hayward in here. I think there's just so many, like, whispers and momentum. You remember the whole Al Horford thing last year? It feels a lot like that, where there's just so much momentum behind it, so much talk, so many whispers behind the scenes, sources sneaking around, all that stuff. Like, I think it's going to happen.
Wait, hold on. Is Kevin Durant's name coming back up?
Hopefully. That was fun. As disappointing as that was, you gotta admit, that was fun. Just to be part of that. That was a lot of fun as Celtics fans. Like, being that close to getting quite possibly the best player in the league was something else. But, Hayward's some good consolation for a great season. I definitely think it makes them a better team overall. And the team's biggest issue that they need to address as they try to fight to become that true contender in the East right now, and Matt Moore mentioned this online a little bit, is when they get open shots, they have to hit them. I mean, we've seen again and again over these past 2 years where they've run into big, high-leverage situations. They get a little antsy, and even though they're getting great looks, even though the offense is working like it should, they're missing easy shots, and that's the Kelly Olynyk problem. That's why I'm not that sad to see Kelly Olynyk go, because he was the chief offender.
At times, it's the Jay Crowder problem.
I mean, yeah, Jay
Crowder definitely missed some wide open shots. Yep.
And I think a guy like Gordon Hayward helps a lot in that department because he's just a shot maker. I mean, you see it with Isaiah too. Like, these guys are born to hit shots. They need more guys like that in here, and this is a great start if that's the direction they're heading in.
Yeah, hopefully Fultz will add to that, and we'll have a lot of different options. Maybe there'll be like a defensive sort of front with the Marcus Smarts and the Jay Crowders, depending on how the trades break down, and the Avery Bradleys. And then there's this offensive force with, Thomas and Hayward and Fultz. We never know how that's going to go down. But a lot of it is confidence, Bobby. You have a ton of it for somebody who just completed the freshman year. And we love having you on the CLNS Media Network. You did an awesome job with the post-game shows. Just came in with just power, enthusiasm to help us kick off off-season talk here on Celtics Stuff Live. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's always a good time. You need me to make an open shot, I'll always do it.
Awesome.
Knocking them down. Bobby Manning, no doubt. All right, well, real quick, it is still the playoffs, although we are down to the finals, and having the right players on the court will be the key to the success. And boy, I'm not even sure who I'm rooting for, but that sharp outside shooter or power rebounder can be the difference between winning and losing, and business isn't any different. Your company needs the right people to be the best. So where do you go to find top talent? You can't find the best candidates by posting your job on just one site. You need to post them on all the top job sites, and now you can with ZipRecruiter. At ZipRecruiter.com, you could post your job to over 100 job sites, and that's just with one click, because their powerful, efficient technology matches you with the right people to your position that's posted. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike the other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. In fact, over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in less than 24 hours. No juggling emails or calls to your office. You can simply screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. So find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes nationwide. And right now, here's the benefit of being a listener of Celtics Stuff Live. You can start forming your own winning team on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. That will allow you to post your first job for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. Try it for free today. One more time, ZipRecruiter.com/sportsfan. All right, John. So Bobby was a fantastic guest in the first half of the show. Now we have Sam Sheehan, and he is of the Scorching Shamrocks podcast here on CLNS Media Network, as well as a good representative from the Reddit board. Basically makes that world go round. And Sam's going to talk to us about the cap, which we just got into with Bobby, but not real deep, and that's why Sam's such a perfect match for the second half of the show. We didn't script it because we don't script anything on this show, but we couldn't have scripted it better.
Like they can't tell.
Right, like they can't, right. That's funny.
Hold on, you guys are going off book here. What page are we on? Oh, you said not, yeah, right, it's not scripted. It's not scripted at all.
Keep up, kid. All right, go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Dude, the kids are all right.
I appreciate
this really is. Hold on, real quick. I'll bring you in. I'll give you like a big, glorious introduction too. But I will say this: it is the kids are us version of the show because it's like John and I are these old men with back problems, and we're getting close to taking blood pressure and cholesterol medication. And then we've got you and Bobby on, and John is always joking with you on Twitter about, is that what the kids say? These days, am I where I need to be with this? And Sam, you always have John's back, so it's awesome to have you on the show, not only for your capology, but also just for your understanding of, I guess, the millennial generation, which, John and I we're Xers, I believe.
Right.
Well, I'm glad you guys had Bobby on ahead of this, because Bobby's actually cool, and we can get like a nice taste of what it's like to have like these like guys who are almost 30 like me posing as children and how like uncool we are. So I'm happy to sort of be here to bridge the gap between actual adults like you guys and young cool kids like Bobby, and to just be in that perfect little valley. But I appreciate you guys having me on.
It's great to have you on, Sam. And you and I have been talking a lot. We're going to get right into it. I think when people turn into podcasts, they look for a lot of things. They look for like entertainment quality, good hosts, great guests, check. And then the fourth thing they look for is like a detailed and really laborious look at the cap situation and the collective bargaining agreement signed between the NBA Players Association and the owners of the NBA franchises. So I'm sure people are looking forward to the next 20 minutes. But when you get past
I remember that in Serial. That was what Serial was about, right? Like
exactly.
Sarah Koenig did like a giant cap detailed thing about what Adnan, what his cap hold was. That's what I
think
heard.
that's what it was. I think that was it. We're gonna get to the room exception next. So we got into that with Jam Packard. So we were just talking with Bobby, and it was really a nice kind of segue into this conversation because you and I have been talking a lot about this. I'm trying to figure out what you know, and certainly your good friend from the Reddit board, Ryan Bernardoni, wrote quite a bit about it. You've worked up a lot of numbers about it. Basically, what we were talking about just as with Bobby just before we came on was that this is a pivotal summer for the Celtics, and that there are some important decisions that have to be made by the Celtics about not just creating cap space and the people that need to go away, but there may be some people who are near and dear to your hearts as people who've watched this team over the last few years that may need to be traded away to create that space for Gordon Hayward to come in. And what if you could just kind of set this table for that and why that's the case as easily as you can?
Gotcha. Okay. So basically, more or less, you've got a whole series of guys, that are going out. Those guys that are going out, Gerald Green, James Young, Amir Johnson, Jonas Jerebko, and Tyler Zeller, who, although he's not a free agent, is almost definitely going to be waived ahead of June 30th to make room, to get his $8 million off the books to keep Gordon Hayward in check. So really what the Celtics, the moving parts the Celtics are kind of looking at right now are Kelly Olynyk and his restricted free agency, and the rest of the roster. And if you renounce the rights to Kelly Olynyk, because he has a pretty sizable cap hold, I think it's about $9.2 million on the books, that if you renounce that, the Celtics are still about $4 million short of the cap space they would need on a $101 million cap. Now that might move around a little bit because what needs to happen is the season needs to wrap up. They need to total all the money that the league made and then decide on what the new salary cap is and write that in. It's probably going to be around $101 million. If you use that $101 million estimate, the Celtics are about $4 million short of that maximum cap space they would need for like Gordon Hayward, Blake Griffin, those guys. So they need to make some decisions. There are a couple different ways for them to get to that. There's they can get rid of they could like trade Terry Rozier They would need the first option is getting like a collection of young guys, making the room with the young guys. So that would mean like maybe trading Terry Rozier, in addition to like waiving Jordan Mickey and Demetrius Jackson, or also maybe getting Gershon Yabusele to stay out for an extra year, or maybe even Ante Zizic for an extra year. Probably not him, but though I'm just going over those options. The second option would be to trade Marcus Smart. The third option would be to trade Jay Crowder. The fourth option would be to trade Isaiah Thomas. And the fifth option, which I think is pretty the one that I kind of lean towards, would be trading Avery Bradley, which I think is sort of the one that might make the most sense, going forward for a variety of reasons.
Hey, how urgent, and this was kind of the debate that was beginning, but we didn't really get anywhere in fleshing it out with Bobby, but how urgent do you think it is for them to make some decisions around trading some of these players? Because my opinion is if they get Hayward, because that's really where the crunch really comes into play. Otherwise, they can sort of stand pat and wait for the right deal at the right time. But my opinion is they're not going to extend Isaiah now. They're going to wait and see how the medical thing plays out next season and how the roster shapes out, in my opinion. With that in mind, any big trades, they really have till the next trade deadline before they might really want to have to decide how they're going to move in the next offseason, because at that point they really are at the last minute for now. They have Smart, they have Bradley, we have Thomas, all these guys that need to get their extensions. Then we get into real dangerous waters. But I don't think that they necessarily have to make any moves this summer in terms of trades. I'm not saying they won't, but I don't think Danny should feel any pressure to do so, and I don't think he generally succumbs to that. He kind of waits for the right moment.
Right.
So what is your thoughts there? I understand we may have to let go of Rozier, and the cap has to fall into place, and so it might force somebody like Bradley out, and it takes one thing they have to do next offseason off the table, and sort of serves two purposes. But they shouldn't be giving anything away for free just because they feel like they have to make a deal because of the roster crunch. We've heard of that before, and yet season after season they find a way to make it work.
Right. What I would say is the difference here is if you get, it would be, I would think the logic would almost apply the other way around though, because, if you do wait until the last second when these teams sort of have you over the barrel is when you lose the leverage. I might even think that, teams might be able to, leverage it a little bit if you do get Gordon Hayward and they understand that you need to unload Avery Bradley or something. Some of these teams might even be able to kind of hold you hostage a little bit and make you overpay to unload the cap space. That's how the Celtics really got Isaiah Thomas in the first place, was a similar deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron was coming to Cleveland. They used the Paul Pierce trade exception to take on Marcus Thornton and Tyler Zeller to clear Cleveland's cap space. They sent Jarrett Jack to the Nets, and they got a pick for their trouble. And the Celtics don't want to have to be in a situation where they have to pay someone a draft pick to trade one of their good young players. So I think you're right.
I don't know though, but they don't have to clear the cap space. To me, that's the big difference.
Well, they might not. That's what I'm saying. If you wait until you do need to clear the cap space, then you're in that situation. By sort of
you don't necessarily have to sign the guys though. That's kind of what I'm getting.
That's true.
You could just go into free agency. You don't have to retain these guys if you've got somebody better. This is my whole point. Why not evaluate the talent that you have before you make a decision on that? And even if you do get bent over the barrel at the trade deadline, is it really still going to be that bad? And the other thing is, what are you getting back? Is it still taking up the same amount of cap space? Because you still have that issue. You still have that concern. So I definitely wouldn't want to see them, throw the first pick in the draft, Markelle Fultz just, now we have to move him with Bradley and Crowder to get Butler so that we can deal with the cap space issue, which I'm not sure it even solves.
Right.
But I don't think that's the issue though, is it, Sam? I mean, I know what you're saying. I mean, you're right that in terms of the order, but to even get the space for Hayward, alone, right, on July 1, to be able to say by July 10th or 11th.
But is that just Rozier, really? Rozier and Renounce Olynyk?
No, it's
more.
It's more. Yeah. So what it would be is if you're trading Rozier, you got to do the other stuff too. You got to get rid of Jordan Mickey and some of these other guys, and it's the path of least resistance. Now the thing that sort of changed my mind was a couple of days back. I went through, and like whenever I do cap stuff, I went through, spent hours and hours and hours doing something. Went to go post it, looked at Ryan Bernardoni's timeline, realized he had done it better than me 4 hours earlier, and my life is a living hell. But the thing I found out was what he and I kind of came to the same conclusion independently, though, which was that the Celtics are gonna, right now they are in real tax trouble down the line, Hayward or no Hayward. If you think, unless, let's say there's like a hypothetical, max free agent, Avery Bradley and Isaiah Thomas. If in 2018 you have two of those guys on the roster, whatever combination you want, Bradley in the max free agent, Isaiah Thomas in the max free agent, just Bradley and Thomas, you are probably going to be paying the luxury tax, and you're probably going to be paying the luxury tax going forward, on a team that, is really dependent on Fultz and, Jaylen Brown's maturation and, just their young guys improving, which, that's not terrible, but I'm not sure that that's the maximization of that space. So with that in mind, trading guys like Terry Rozier, who are going to be under contract for, under these rookie scale contracts for a little bit, less at, and particularly when they're on lower salary slots, like, Yabusele and Zizic, because like Jaylen Brown and, Markelle Fultz, we hear a lot about those guys being on rookie scale contracts, and rookie scale contracts are very cheap, which is true. But when you're one of the first few picks in the draft, it's actually pretty expensive. Like Markelle Fultz
is going to be like $7 million, right? Is that what it's coming down to?
Exactly.
And then Jalen's $4.5? So they're not as cheap. I hear what you're saying. Like those later picks, like Rozier and et cetera, they're cheaper. But let's also, so I see where this gets out of control, because if all these players are really great, there is no super team in the world that's going to be able to have 8 players that are potentially, all-stars, right? And you're not going to be able to, so some of these guys have to go. It's just a matter of how they go. But answer me this question. Even if we spin Bradley off, or we make a combination where it's Bradley and Crowder, we're still taking back the same or close to the same salary anyway, and the player is somebody we covet even more for doing so. Aren't we still in that luxury cap problem? Have we really solved anything in doing that? I guess that's my other thing about getting urgent this summer is all I see is it's just committing more money longer term, and we still have a glut of first round picks. So if we have some casualties and we need cheap talent, it's not like the Cleveland scenario where they mortgaged all of their future first, and so now they're just trying to get veterans to come in, who maybe, like a Darren Williams, who's just starting to crest, and hey, great for them, it works. But if we're going to do this teeter-totter of youth and compete all at the same time, we still have all of these picks that most teams don't have the luxury of having. And I don't think we have to spin it off to create cap space. I think we use that to round out the roster in the future. But I just don't think we can keep all these guys anyway, period.
Right. So, I agree with the concept. You don't want to be trading Avery Bradley for like Chris Middleton or like JJ Redick or like other established guys who those guys make more money than Avery Bradley, but you know what I get what you're saying. You don't want to be taking back the same amount of money. The idea of an Avery Bradley thing, like what Ryan's written about and I was talking about, is a deal along the bones where you're getting back a pick and you're trading him into some sort of cap space or traded player exception where you're getting back a player who makes less than $4 million, because that clears the maximum cap space you would need for Gordon Hayward. So, like, my idea, what I would be doing if I were Danny Ainge.
So would you do Rozier and Bradley and just get future picks and just keep stockpiling then? Because you draft Fultz, neither one of those players has really got a shot at getting a lot of minutes without taking the number one pick and sitting him on the bench for a long time.
I think I keep Rozier. I mean, the idea, what I would do if I'm Danny Ainge, I'm active on draft night and I'm shopping Avery Bradley, quietly shopping Avery Bradley and seeing if something blows me away. Like you said, nothing needs to be big, but weird stuff happens on draft night. Guys get, GMs get carried away. Things are there, I wouldn't be shocked if we got more Jackie Mack style reports that he was, floating Isaiah Thomas just to see what's out there. Now, I don't think any team would conceivably give the Celtics more than what Isaiah Thomas is worth to the Celtics, and I think that's kind of the problem with trading Isaiah Thomas is he's just the most valuable to the Celtics. There's not a team that's going to be willing to pay what he's worth to this team and, propping up the offense, and, just sort of what he's done in the past. So that would be why I would kind of look at Bradley, because that's the bottom line is it's going to be the draft night is one of the easiest nights to trade, but besides like maybe around the deadline. And if you need to clear this cap space for Gordon Hayward, if you need to be able to go into the meetings offering Gordon Hayward max cap space. I know some people are going to say he can maybe just take a little pay cut. Like, players don't take pay cuts to change teams. You need to give him the full max. You need to have that money readily available. And, you need the bottom line is the Celtics need to find a way to clear $4 million. And given that, there is a log jam on the horizon with the tax, and that, we have Markelle Fultz likely coming in at the guard position, and, that Isaiah Thomas is probably not – it's going to be difficult to find equal trade value for Isaiah Thomas and what he brings. I just feel like it's got to be, depending on how you feel about Smart or Bradley, you got to pick one of them. I think Marcus Smart's restricted free agency is going to be important as far as those tax stuff is concerned, where he will probably be cheaper than what Avery Bradley will get on the unrestricted free agent market. So that's why I kind of lean Bradley. I understand if other fans would like to, if they err on the side of maybe trading Thomas or, trading Smart or, like you said, trading Rozier, cutting the young guys, trying to stash Yabusele. I get that too. I feel like that's much tighter and you probably can't get as much of a return and you risk losing Avery. Like, you're going to need to pick between Bradley, Hayward, and Thomas, in a year or two anyway. So losing those guys only to lose Bradley later seems a little silly, without getting anything for him. But, those are the options. Like, those are what it sees. And to me, Bradley just makes the most sense.
Yeah.
As far as a trade guy.
And so to go off of that, to create the optimal trade someone away scenario is that one, you send him to a team that has cap space. Two, you have a team that can send back an asset in trade that will hopefully maybe fill a roster spot as a decent player. I know Ryan was floating out, Robert Covington as a guy who's low money. Rashawn Holmes is another guy who might fill that role as a big, but can do some different things, and a pick coming back. Do you think that, and some of the stuff that Ryan was throwing at, and you and I have talked about, it's much more, I think Bradley's raised his profile in this playoff run. It's going to make it harder for the Celtics to get rid of him. Do you think that changes the calculus at all? Maybe not so much on Boston's side of it, wanting to keep him, but also in terms of what you should be expecting back in return. This isn't a straight salary dump. I don't think the Celtics need to avoid that type of terminology, that outlook as much as possible, right?
Right. Well, and that's kind of why I'm saying do it during the draft, because if you get into a position, if you get into a position where Gordon Hayward is committed, and teams realize you need to do the salary dump, you're not going to get equal value. You're just going to be stuck you might. I doubt it would be anything anywhere near as dramatic as what happened with Cleveland and LeBron. But you definitely don't want to be paying a draft pick to get rid of Avery Bradley or even your young guys. You don't want to have to pay someone to take on Terry Rozier. Terry Rozier is a good player. There's so I think getting out ahead of it, while it's painful and it might seem really silly. Like Avery Bradley's been here forever. He's the longest tenured Celtic. We've got a lot of good memories of Avery. He's a really good player, first team all defense. So it just seems silly for an Eastern Conference finalist team to be trading a guy who was their best player in those games, to be trading him for a draft pick. I get why that sounds absolutely insane to someone who might be more casual or not as familiar with the financials, or why some of this stuff might make a little bit more sense. But really, you're getting out ahead of a storm. You know what I'm saying? If you're not picking Avery Bradley, you need to find another place to cut that out. And there just simply isn't as much these other guys. There's just it's not as strong of a proposition. You're probably not getting as much of a return for Isaiah Thomas. Jay Crowder is cost controlled for 3 more years. So when you do get into those tax troubles, you really want to have him around. And not to mention he plays the most shallow position in the NBA at small forward. Even if Jaylen Brown does develop, it's always good to have another wing who can play 2 through 4. And Marcus Smart, he has his restricted free agency. Terry Rozier, same thing, with an extra year of the rookie scale. All of the rookies, I think that it's most likely that Avery Bradley gets traded, I guess, is the long and short of it. And I understand why a fan might, be listening to this and set me on fire in effigy. If you have,
we've been talking about this a long time, though, Sam. It's not even though it's become the logical conclusion from the math. It's been the logical conclusion even from just the roster construction. And John and I have talked about it for quite some time. And the unfortunate thing is he wound up having such an impact on the postseason. I have a little bit of hesitation where I was trigger happy 4 months ago. But I think Avery was a big piece of, what was happening there in the playoffs. And so now it's making that not taste as good. At the same time, I don't want to rely on the height thing, but if Isaiah Thomas is our point guard moving forward, or even if he's our off guard, and as great as Avery has been defensively, offensively, we saw a few spurts where he was attacking the rim. He had a blown dunk that would have been awesome if he'd finished it. And he really has the ups. We've seen him block Dwayne Wade at the rim before. So we know that he plays taller than 6'2". But when you see Marcus Smart go in there, he brings in a little bit different kind of tenacious defense. I'm not even saying that Fultz is going to provide that level of defense. What I am saying is I like 6'4", and the fact that the guy's got a 6'10" reach or something like that. I mean, that's what he may not have in Avery's defensive tenacity. He'll more than make up for in scoring, which the team needs. And he's got the length that if he shows commitment, he'll be that kind of a defender. And with all that said, are you going to put Avery Bradley on the bench? You're going to sign him to an extension and put him on the bench behind Fultz once Fultz deserves the starting nod? That's a painful choice for Avery. Even though he did it to Ray, it's just not going to fly when he's hitting his prime.
Yeah, and I mean, something else too. When you just go through in terms of, this is a drum I've kind of been beating for a little bit, more as just an unabashed president of the Marcus Smart fan club, that I adore him.
Actually, I'm sorry. I think John's the president. I think we voted on that.
I'm sorry. I'm czar.
There was a quorum.
Chapter czar. Oh, okay. I've been. There was a revolution.
Sam, that is just such a millennial thing to do, right there. That's
I was gonna say, dang. All right. Well, I feel like the revolution, the proletariat is gonna rise up. We're gonna seize the Marcus Smart fan club. back from the
bourgeois.
John's.
You could say it.
His
Dinosaurs.
bourgeoisie, yeah,
Dinosaur bourgeois.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I think but Avery Bradley. One of the very quiet stories about Avery Bradley is the Celtics don't play as well when Avery Bradley's on the court. He was pretty handily the worst starter this year in terms of a lot of the on-court metrics. I watched the same playoffs you guys did. I came out of it thinking, wow, Avery Bradley, like really, that was a big playoff for him. And then I went and I looked at the playoff numbers, and he had those monster rebounding stats during the year. He was one of the worst rebounders on the team, which is understandable, because he's a point guard going through that. His true shooting percentage, he was only ahead of Smart, whose own shooting woes are documented for the playoffs. And, just a lot of the plus minus, just a lot of these advanced metrics, you've heard like Zach Lowe and some of these other guys sort of allude to this, that the analytics community is not sure about Avery Bradley. First team all defense, you look at the eye test, and the eye test is so convincing, and you see the defense, you see these things, you see him backdoor cutting the Cavaliers over and over and over again. But then you look at the point production and just the fact that the Celtics don't outscore opponents as much when Avery Bradley's on the floor. At a certain point, when we have 2.5 years of data on this, and they just can't do this, no matter who the starter, if it's starters, bench players, it's a mix. It's not just that he plays with the starters. It's not just that if he plays with the bench unit, anything. It's just they just don't do as well. And I think a lot of that has to do with wing length, with just playing undersized and playing with Marcus Smart and some of these other guys. But when Smart is on the floor without him, the team does better. When Isaiah Thomas is on the floor without him, there's just all sorts of things there that make sense for it's time for the Celtics to sort of part ways with Avery Bradley, and this offseason would make the most sense in terms of from a return perspective, from a fit perspective, from a financial perspective. It just makes too much sense, and that's kind of why I would strongly advocate for it. Now, that said, it's not the worst thing in the world if they make another decision. I just will probably disagree with it and throw a temper tantrum on Twitter until I get my account suspended. So, sorry if I get kicked off. You guys keep carrying the torch for me.
Well, and in the history of you throwing tantrums, it actually works out pretty well for the Celtics. So
yeah, right. That's very true. I'm wrong like 70% of the time. So this might be the 30% though.
This could be the 30%.
Yes,
absolutely. So let's talk about the post that Steve Bulpett, as we're kind of rounding the corner here. Mm-hmm. So Bulpett talks to Danny Ainge, and Bulpett's very close to Ainge, and sometimes it says NBA sources, sometimes it actually says Danny Ainge's name. So we know that Steve and Danny talk, and Danny gets the words out that he needs to get out to the fans through Steve. We know this. So in the blog post yesterday, and I personally believe, this is my own belief, is that it's guys like you and Ryan that caused this response from Danny. Because we know that Zarin and those guys listen to what you guys say. They follow the Reddit board and they comment. Sometimes Zarin goes right to Twitter directly. And so the question goes is, can we, and everyone's looking at what's going to happen with Isaiah, and are we going to re-sign Isaiah? And as you said, I think that's an issue for a future time. Isaiah mentioned that in the closing press conferences. But the comment that Danny Ainge says is that we can afford to keep everybody. The idea is we can keep Isaiah, we can keep Bradley, and we're not worried about that moving forward. And the presumption, or I guess what I am presuming, I should say, from that, is that they're willing to pay extra tax to keep Avery Bradley and Isaiah Thomas on this team, in addition to Gordon Hayward, because I think that just goes without saying that that's the target. And you said to me on Twitter, well, they're going to pass the tithing basket and all that. I mean, explain why that's an issue. I mean, because they could keep people, they could send away Crowder, somebody who's cap cost controlled, but gets them that $4 million, or they could send away Smart, who they'll have to re-sign next summer. But Bradley's going to expect somewhere between $18 and $20 million. Smart, IT is going to get somewhere between $28 and $31 million. There's going to be a big increase for both guys next summer. Why is it that tax issue, the luxury tax issue, is really not only is this $4 million to get Hayward, but the long-term concerns for Bradley are perhaps a bigger issue moving forward.
Right. So, I just want to start by saying, shout out to Trader Danny Doublespeak. I love when he gives these, because he does it all, Danny is, a Mormon, very honest guy. He's not like really going to lie, but he will tell truths that are, it's technically true. Yes, they can't afford Marcus Smart and Avery Bradley this year. They absolutely can. It's very easy if you don't sign Gordon Hayward. It's also very easy if, for them to pay for it this year. They're not going to be near any taxes. It's in 2018 when the taxes. So it's very easy for it to be this year for them to, not run into any trouble. They can obviously keep those guys, but it's just down the line. So, something, I talked about this on the Celtics roundtable, also on CLNS Media here the other day. That's a native network plug for you.
There you go.
Those guys, and we were talking about, going forward, what the tax is going to be like. And something because I thought this way before I really looked at the CBA and the tax. I always thought of the tax as like, $4 or $5 million extra here, $4 or $5 million. You know what I'm saying? It's just like a little bit more money that like sometimes like you see the cash get thrown around in trades. The luxury tax is very, very, very punitive. It's like it's the first tier of luxury tax is you pay $1.50 in luxury tax for every dollar of salary. So like let's say, basically my projections have if they sign Gordon Hayward, and this is with trading Avery Bradley, and they re-sign Marcus Smart to like an $18 million deal or somewhere in there, which I think is a little conservative in a couple of years. Every dollar over $10 million they pay to Isaiah Thomas is going to be in the tax. So if you pay $20 million in tax to Isaiah Thomas, it's like tiered in like $5 million buckets. It ends up being like $50 million in tax. That's like paying, that's like paying Kawhi Leonard twice. That's like paying 2 Kawhi Leonards on your team just in tax. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just really untenable, which is part of the, that's another reason I think, we have that hot take circulating that Cleveland is going to be, you can't get through LeBron in the East. You can't get through LeBron in the East. You got to kick the can down the road, let the young guys develop. The Cleveland is going to hit the repeater tax, which, hikes that even further. They are going to have to pay a ton of money. Like with this cap spike and all the spending that happened with all these teams, we're going to see a lot of teams running into tax issues. It's not just the Celtics. I was listening to like the Dunked On podcast, and they were talking about the Bucks' tax problems. I was like, "What? The Milwaukee Bucks have tax issues?" And I looked at it, and sure enough, yeah, they're also gonna have some tax issues. Like this is not a.
I bet tell me the Portland Trailblazers have cap issues.
Oh my God, they're in so much trouble. Like those crab. Like I feel like the Nets have to be like
Crab and
kind
Turner.
of happy.
Yeah.
They really dodged a bullet with those offer sheets that those got matched. The Tyler Johnson and that Crab offer sheet, because this is going to be a league wide thing. Everything's flattening out. The money isn't coming in as much as it thought. I mean, like this postseason, the playoffs are shorter. It's been a crappy playoffs. There's not as many games, not as much money. Like. It's just that the cap is a little bit depressed, so you don't have these tax issues are just, it's just really wild to expect just because we like Avery Bradley and he's pretty good. It's like wild to expect Wick and the other owners to pay $50 million, like more than LeBron James will make. You know what I'm saying? In just the most expensive player in the league doesn't make anywhere close to $50 million. Like Kobe Bryant at his most expensive made like $30 million. It's not realistic to expect that for Avery Bradley, a team to pay $50 million in luxury tax. So that's why the Celtics need to make these changes, and why, even if they don't add anyone, they are still probably going to run into these luxury tax issues down the line. So, when you see that coming, it really makes a lot of sense to make this sort of make a priority to do something about it this offseason, so you're not up against it next season. You want to get as much of this sort of squared away, and, it just makes more sense in the long run to sort of have these guys staggered. If you sign Gordon Hayward to a 3+1, Al Horford's got 3 years left, maybe he opts out. And, those guys are starting to come off the books around the same time. Like Fultz and Jalen are going to start hitting, their free agencies. And then, it works out pretty naturally at that point. You might have to pay the tax one of the years, maybe 2 of the years, but just, I think getting out ahead of it is going to be important. And that's kind of why the Avery Bradley thing, he's sort of the definite odd man out. You just can't, that tax is just, it's too ridiculous. Sorry, it's just sobering because it's a little too heavy. But
no, it is. It is heavy. I need a rose to get me over this. For those who don't know, you get good Celtic stuff from Sam. You get some good politics stuff from Sam. But really the heart of his Twitter feed is really some Bachelorette and Bachelor stuff. And,
it's very strong, very important part of my brand.
It is. It's really, so it's good stuff. For those of us who have no idea what the Bachelorette or Bachelor stuff, right. It's entertaining nevertheless. But no, I'm glad you kind of break this down for us, because it as we've kind of looked at this, and I think there's a lot of tough issues out there it's a math problem. Predominantly, it's a math problem. The math is going to work itself out, and there are some questions and some variables is, how much tax is Wick and company willing to pay to go down that road. But as you said, it becomes at some point, it's insane to pay it. It's not even a question of, as you said, 4 or 5 million here as it used to be under the old tax. The new tax is a different deal, and something that not to be trifled with, especially if you're not in legitimate championship contention, which I think a lot of people have a question of whether or not adding Gordon Hayward alone is enough to really put you into that category. And I think we're going to really find that question order.
Somebody is going to have a Vin Baker contract again in the next 3 to 4 years.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. There's no doubt. It's funny because it felt like there was finally some room, and the league had sorted out those kinds of scenarios, and they gave everybody this one-time, basically dump a anchor of a salary sort of exception, which the Celtics never wound up using. And I remember when that was coming out, I was like, oh, thank goodness we'll have something that we could use. But then we didn't wind up needing it. And most of those players became valuable trade assets, which will certainly happen again. And that may be another way to look at it with this roster. Not every one of these draft picks is going to work out, and some of these players may not work out, and it may be that we wind up having tradable picks and tradable sort of expiring contracts down the line, and they'll figure it out. It is a math problem. It is a difficult math problem. If we wind up losing a guy for less than value, but that's because the team has so many assets on it, it can't possibly manage it, I don't think that's a bad thing. And so, that this is the downside to being a team that really is the benefit of many riches. So hopefully that will play out with postseason performance next year without a dip. We'll certainly find out. That's going to do it for this week. So Sam, I just wanted to say thanks for coming on. And we're going to have you on a lot more again over the summer, I'm certain. You and Bobby and as well as others. That's kind of, John and I are horrible about making this a home for people during the season because there's so much for us to talk about. But in the off season, that's when we kind of welcome everybody back to the show. So thanks for coming on and bringing a little bit of education around the cap to us.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Hopefully, I don't hurt your subscriber numbers too much when they hear that, like, a guy who likes The Bachelor was, like, coming on. I hope I don't cost you too many long-time listeners. If you guys need to dump me, like the O'Reilly Fox thing because of my, my strong Bachelor takes, I understand. If you need to do it, it's a tough business. I understand the cutthroat competition, but I'd also love coming back. I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm going to try and write something for Celtics Hub later this week, and once Sullivan gets paroled out of Walpole Correctional Facility, we're going to have another Scorching Shamrocks here coming down the pipe. God help me.
Man,
God help.
People have to go back and listen to the Evan Turner show. The music, just really amazing, an amazing song. So go to the CLNS Media Network app, search for it on iTunes, or your app marketplace for Android, and you'll be able to download the Scorching Shamrocks. Also, make sure you're hanging out at the Celtics subreddit and Celtics Hub, where you'll find more of Sam's work, as well as him being on this show frequently throughout the off season.
Yeah, I just want to hop in and make it because I don't want to give the I stopped doing moderating the subreddit. I still lurk there from time to time, but shout out to those moderators. They do a great job. Check it out. It's a great community. Really, really helped me, coming up, sort of learn and understand some things. Guys write great things there. Shout out to the moderation team. Those guys do a great job. I really, I feel comfortable with the sub in their hands. They've really grown the subreddit a lot. But yeah, I'm on, check me out on Celtics Hub. We're going to have something, coming out later this week. And feel free to, follow me on Twitter. That's my self plugs. That's what I got.
All right. Awesome, Sam. Thank you very much. That's going to do it for this week's show. The broadcast will be available on demand on the CLNS Radio mobile app, as well as clnsradio.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at CSL_Justin and at CSL_Duke. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You can support the show by subscribing to Celtic Stuff Live on iTunes and Stitcher. Don't forget to give us a rating and a review. Your feedback is important to us. And a reminder, today's show brought to you by ZipRecruiter.com. They have a great deal for all of you listeners, but most importantly, you'd be supporting our show and the entire CLNS Media Network. Thanks to the loyal audience for making it all worthwhile, and for staff writer Samuel Elias, executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of CLNS Media Network, Nick Gelso, and my co-host John Duke, I'm Justin Poulin. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Celtic Stuff Live.
Celtic Stuff Live.